afternoon. It all started at around 8:50 this morning.
Let's go, folks. Let's move back. All the way back to the street.
And this is what it looked like this morning at 3rd and Mariah on the eastern edge of downtown St. Paul. An explosion led...
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they've lost their homes. We're going to explain that for you in a moment.
Well, let's get right to our first live report. And for that, we turn to Tom Hauser at the scene. Tom?
We are right near the intersection of 3rd and Mariah where that explosion happened just over 8 hours ago. You can see some of the debris piled up behind me. The cleanup continues here right now. There's going to be a press conference in just a couple of minutes with the St. Paul Fire Chief Tim Fuller, Mayor Jim Scheibel, and Keith Witecki, the president of NSP. We're going to bring you that live in just a few moments. But first, Ezra Marcus was on the scene early today, right after the explosion happened. He brings us up to date on what happened when this explosion occurred at about 10 minutes to 9 this morning.
From the air, smoke and flames spiraled skyward. The plume could be seen from miles away. On the ground, it was a raging inferno. A grocery store, a bookstore, 4 apartments gone. What was left kept burning for hours.
It's going to be extremely labor intensive. We'll be pulling pieces of the building apart and extinguishing fires as we go along.
70 firefighters worked all morning to get the fire under control. Flare-ups kept them hopping. The force of the explosion was so strong, it lifted this car into the air and carried it to an empty lot. The roof sheared off, killing the driver instantly. More dead may lie within the rubble.
In our business, we never give up until we've overturned every little stick and make sure there isn't anybody else, and we'll do that again today.
Officials speculate the fire began with a natural gas leak. At 8:43 this morning, a St. Paul City Works crew of 4 was working on a sewer line nearby when they accidentally struck a gas main. City officials say they had 10 minutes to evacuate residents before the line blew.
All 4 crew people were injured, 2 very minor. 1 is in stable condition and the other is in very critical condition.
So far during the construction season, we've had somewhere around 350 of these type of hits. And every time gas is escaping, there is always a potential of ignition and this type of incident.
And again, the very latest information we have about the people...
There was 2 explosions, one small one, then another big one.
It is believed that a city crew digging up a sewer with this backhoe severed a 4-inch plastic underground gas line.
It's certainly a possibility, but we don't know. It's too soon to tell.
Anytime you're using mechanical equipment around our gas mains, it's not hard to break them.
The maintenance crews and a store owner began evacuating the building. 10 to 15 minutes later, something touched off the leaking gas. It is believed that all the residents and city workers are now accounted for.
We heard that they were evacuated because of the gas smell. They had maybe 15 or 20 minutes to evacuate, but we still can't rely on that information. We still have to go in and search.
Now Fire Chief Tim Fuller is conducting a news conference. We're going to go to that live to see what the latest is.
One fatality. We have the name of the fatality, and someone will give that to you after we're finished here. But we'll be here all night picking this apart. And as you can see, we've begun to clean it up now, and we're investigating the site right now. So,
Chief, were you notified in a timely manner today? Was your department notified, do you think, in an adequate amount of time when this gas leak was first reported today?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that we got the call when it exploded and had fire, and that was at about 8:53. As far as the timeliness of it and everything else, that's something we may have to sort out. We're asking people to call 911, of course, when there's an emergency situation, but someone has to interpret it that way. So
because when there's a gas leak, shouldn't you be called right away, even, to avoid an explosion and to secure the scene?
Normally, we are called right away. We've had a few of these. There's been a lot of construction work going on. Normally, we're called immediately, yes.
Chief, the source of the underground explosion, we've all been speculating all day.
Chief Tim Fuller talking about perhaps what caused this.
A 4-inch gas line that was probably pulled away from the fitting, filling the building up with gas. Who exactly did it, how it all occurred, is purely speculation at this point. So that's part of what we need to investigate. So,
and again, that is
some source of ignition. The explosion instantly leveled a 2-story brick building. St. Paul Fire Chief Tim Fuller compared it to high-powered explosives.
Well, I used to be in explosives, and I can tell you right now, that's one hell of a dynamite explosion.
Mary Lapagard lived in the apartments upstairs and heard about the blast at work.
So they told me to go home. Yeah, to what?
She's relieved she wasn't home, but worried about her neighbors in the other apartments.
Must have been a lot of people still in the building.
The driver of a passing car was crushed to death by the blast, and at least 2 of the city workers were seriously injured. Police pushed onlookers back, fearing secondary explosions, and even as we talked to witnesses, the burning building continued to rumble.
And I came over here, and the lady was laying basically almost close to the corner. And
firefighters worked to contain the flames, but avoided extinguishing the source of the fire until utility crews could dig a hole nearby and cut off the flow of gas. For some 2 hours, you could hear it still rushing from the ruptured main and feeding the inferno. Ambulances took away 11 victims, 7 of them critically injured. But it could be days before the full toll in lives. It certainly reduces the risk that someone is still caught in the debris.
However, I think they're being quite cautious, because it's been my understanding that the convenience store that was over here was really quite popular with local children in the neighborhood. It was a place to gather very early in the morning, go for a can of pop, make an errand, that kind of thing. I think that's why they're being that judicious. You know, this is the plastic pipe, similar to what was underneath the ground over there, a 4-inch plastic pipe. This was the kind of thing that was hauling the natural gas. And Dennis, the question I have for you is, was the pipe, the area above the pipe, the ground, was it clearly marked for the work crews, the maintenance crew that was over here doing the work?
We asked the NSP that, as you might imagine, earlier today, and they assured us that yes, it was. In fact, it was about 3 days ago. The call came in just as you would call if you were digging in your home, and it was.
Plain folks became heroes. Kevin Murphy risked his life to save a burning woman. Kevin had been buying cigarettes at a neighborhood store.
I was right across the street, and it blew me over when I went. And there was a guy running around, and he wanted some help getting this lady out. So I went to Paul's, got a fire extinguisher, and she was burning. We put her out, and then we carried her out.
At least a dozen people used to live in the apartments above the co-op. Joanne Holmes is one of them. A neighbor warned her to get her grandson and get out 10 minutes before the blast.
I had the baby with me, grabbed his sleeper, his bottle, and my purse and my shoes, and went outside. About 10 minutes later, there was a massive explosion. There was just like flames coming out of the ground.
We caught up with Holmes at the Red Cross office, where she, her grandson, her daughter, and son-in-law all came for help.
I feel very lucky I'm alive and the baby is alive. It just doesn't seem real. You know, you hear about other people losing things in a fire, you don't expect it to be you.
The entire Holmes family is on public assistance, so the Red Cross arranged temporary housing for the family at a downtown hotel.
Things start flooding in as to what they've lost, and oh my goodness, where's my mail going to go? And I've lost all my pictures, and they've just everything. It's really a devastating situation.
She feared the worst, but got good news.
He's one of the lucky ones. He's in the burn unit, but he's going to be okay. He's got burns down the right side and lacerations from the window being blown out.
And amidst all of the trauma, a heartwarming reunion. Val Helmuth had watched her sister drive right into the explosion area just minutes before it happened.
But then I couldn't find my sister, and so I asked them, the police, if they had seen a red car in the vehicle or in the rubble and stuff, and at that time they told me they couldn't tell.
Now, right now, we have some specifics on the conditions of the injured. First, the critical. Donna Guthrie, she is of St. Paul. James Syrian, White Bear Lake. Eric Bernstad of Minneapolis, now the serious. Ali Artoli of St. Paul. Mark Ritter of St. Paul. Gertrude Raths of St. Paul. Philip Everson of Center City. And Charles St. Clair of St. Paul, treated and released. Randolph Parker of St. Paul. Carolyn Baker, also of St. Paul. John Williams of Roseville, and Roshan Pickens of St. Paul. The physicians here say that many of these people will have long hospital stays. We'll be back with more information for you, Randy and Wendy, at 6 and 10.
The Dayton's Bluff neighborhood smelled natural gas. Evacuations had begun when the gas leak, apparently caused by a city maintenance crew, then ignited. The Mariah Market was blasted, as was an adjoining bookstore and an 8-unit apartment building above. At this hour, we do know that one person is dead, and 7 or 8 are still hospitalized. Several of those are critical, as you heard. And Obviously, the corner of this east side neighborhood is in shambles for the time being. But they are working fast and furious behind me right now to remove all of this debris out here. But it's really going to take a while to get everything back to normal. As you heard Fire Chief Timothy Fuller say right off the top, Pat, as we go back to you, that they want to move very cautiously and slowly through that debris over there. They do think everyone is accounted for, but they just want to make sure, as they sift through the rest of that debris, that there's no one else in there. So